Welcome to my Daily Stoic, where we delve into the depths of human behavior and explore the philosophies that guide us. Today, we take a closer look at a personality type that can be as captivating as it is dangerous: the narcissist. Have you ever met someone who seems to radiate confidence and superiority, constantly seeking admiration while reacting defensively to the slightest criticism? You might have sensed something was off, but let me assure you, those instincts were just the tip of the iceberg. In this episode, we'll unravel the complex web of narcissistic psychology, tracing its roots back to ancient mythology and examining its unsettling rise in today's society. Narcissism isn't just about self-love, it's a deeply ingrained pattern of behavior that can leave a trail of emotional devastation in its wake. If you're intrigued by the mysteries of the human mind and want to learn more about how to protect yourself from toxic relationships, hit the like button, subscribe to Daily Stoic, and join our community of thinkers. Share your experiences or questions in the comments below. Let's explore together the subtle manipulations and hidden dangers that narcissists present. Remember, knowledge is the first step towards empowerment. Have you ever crossed paths with someone who exudes a sense of superiority in every conceivable way, constantly craving admiration and bristling at even the slightest criticism? Allow me to confirm a suspicion I've harbored for quite some time. That person is dangerous. And as you delve deeper, you'll realize that your initial doubts barely scratch the surface of the storm of humiliations, manipulations, and deceptions that such individuals wield with precision. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to explore the dark labyrinth of narcissistic psychology. The term narcissism has its roots in the myth of Narcissus, a figure from ancient mythology who, upon catching sight of his own reflection in a pool of water, fell deeply in love with his image. He spent countless hours gazing at the radiant beauty of his face, entranced by what he perceived as perfection. However, his obsession with his own reflection consumed him to the point where he could no longer tear his eyes away from the water, much like Gollum with his precious in The Lord of the Rings. Inevitably, this fixation led to his demise, as Narcissus drowned, unable to break free from his own self-infatuation. From that moment, Narcissus became the enduring symbol of vanity and egocentrism, a man who, far from cultivating true self-love, spiraled into madness and self-destruction. But what does this mean for our world today? Unfortunately, the outlook is rather bleak. According to a German study, empirical evidence suggests that narcissism is on the rise in Western societies. One of the most striking indicators of this trend is a 450% increase in the use of the word I in songs, books, and movies. Similarly, words like me, mine, and myself have seen a significant surge. Over the past decade, narcissism has become as prevalent a term in discussions of mental health as autism, and not without reason. Narcissistic Personality Disorder, NPD, has seen a 30% increase between 1979 and 2006. The label narcissist is often thrown around to describe individuals whose selfishness, arrogance, and greed seem particularly pronounced. While these descriptions aren't entirely off the mark, it's important to define the term more rigorously to avoid confusion. Narcissistic personality disorder is a mental condition characterized by an exaggerated sense of self-importance. A narcissist feels compelled to project an idealized, grandiose, and inflated image of themselves to the world. They need to be seen as exceptionally relevant, virtuous, and influential. But why? Because they believe that elevating themselves above others will somehow compensate for their deep-seated insecurities. Indeed, this pursuit of grandeur is nothing more than a desperate attempt to mask their fragile self-esteem and to convince themselves and others that they are not insignificant. Confident and self-assured, but in reality, they are nothing more than a facade, a hollow building, a barking dog with little bite, a fragile glass vase coated in counterfeit diamonds. Many narcissists are remarkably skilled at concealing their inner turmoil. A significant number of individuals with NPD come from dysfunctional families, where one or both parents exhibit narcissistic tendencies. If you reflect on this, it becomes clear that such an environment is a breeding ground for the development of a new generation of narcissists, Consider the fate of a child whose parents dole out love and affection only when the child glorifies their image. How do you think an innocent child, constantly striving to deify the masks worn by their dissatisfied parents, will turn out? Narcissistic parents often modify their behavior toward their children based on how well the child performs in specific areas, such as academic achievements, athletic prowess, or even physical appearance. The child, unable to comprehend that the very people responsible for their care might be deeply flawed, finds their mind descending into a state of turmoil. This leads to feelings of fear, confusion, and overwhelming stress as they struggle to satisfy parents who, to be clear, are incapable of ever being truly satisfied. To compound the problem, narcissistic parents rarely acknowledge their children's accomplishments in a meaningful way. Instead, they view these successes as mere extensions of their own inflated self-image, tools to further reinforce their delusions of grandeur, rather than recognizing them as milestones in the child's intellectual, emotional, and spiritual growth. Consequently, the child becomes ensnared in a desperate cycle of trying to meet the unattainable expectations of their parents, whether through a surprise, a talent, or a well-timed joke. Sometimes these attempts bring fleeting approval, but more often than not, they fall flat. Unbeknownst to the child, this environment begins to lay the groundwork for narcissism within their own psyche, instilling a deep-seated need to project a perfected and distorted image of themselves to the world. A facade meant to elicit recognition, admiration, and validation. This situation is nothing short of terrifying, yet it is the harsh reality faced by countless families, a reality that demands attention. The unspoken message from these parents is clear. I love you, but only when you help enhance my image as the perfect parent. Otherwise, you are a burden to me. It's important to note, however, that narcissism, in and of itself, does not always manifest as a full-blown mental disorder. In some cases, it appears as a personality trait that the individual manages with a degree of competence. This might involve everyday behaviors, such as looking in the mirror and appreciating one's attractiveness, sharing personal goals, projects, and achievements with others, or prioritizing personal interests during periods of high demand. There is, of course, nothing inherently wrong with self-love or the desire for self-improvement. The problem with narcissism, however, lies not in the what, but in the how and the why. Sustaining an artificial status of superiority requires a tremendous amount of effort on the narcissist's part. It is anything but effortless. It is at this juncture that pathological attitudes and dysfunctional behaviors begin to emerge, causing significant harm to those in their orbit. But how do narcissists ensure they appear more important than they actually are? How do they accomplish this? To understand, let's adopt their perspective for a moment. Imagine a narcissistic boss who maintains contact with 50 employees in their company. It's crucial to remember that, in the narcissist's view, people are not seen as social beings to share experiences, emotions, and learning with. Rather, they are instruments meant to serve the narcissist's grander purpose, exalting their social image. Being true egocentrics, arrogant, conceited, and condescending, they are acutely aware that not everyone in their vicinity can equally fuel their desire for grandeur. The primary objective is to identify individuals who will admire, comfort, and validate them through their actions, words, or emotions. In other words, the ideal candidate is someone who provides the so-called emotional supply: validation, admiration, and comfort. The groups most adept at providing this emotional sustenance to a narcissist typically include individuals who are highly empathetic and can effortlessly see the world through the narcissist's eyes. Those with an optimistic outlook who consistently expect the best from the narcissist. People who possess a rescuing nature, often inclined to help those who have experienced past traumas, and individuals with a high tendency to forgive others' shortcomings. Let's assume that out of those 50 employees, 20 do not fit these criteria. This leaves a pool of 30 who are more vulnerable to becoming targets. What the narcissist does next is initiate what is commonly known as the testing phase. During this period, they will behave in an entirely normal, even excessively congenial manner towards the rest of the team, making grand promises of extraordinary outcomes if everyone takes their work seriously and fully commits. They will lend an attentive ear to the needs of their employees and display an abundance of patience. On the surface, everything appears quite positive, so where's the catch? Don't be deceived, dear friend. The narcissistic boss is merely gathering information to use later for their own benefit. Their promises are hollow, their attentiveness is fleeting, and their patience has strict limits. As time goes on, the narcissist's true colors begin to emerge through subtle manipulation, indifference, and arrogance. Their cold, twisted, and calculating nature starts to reveal itself, particularly towards those who are the most empathetic, optimistic, rescuing, and forgiving. The narcissist is now like a sniper, poised to take their shot. So what does their arsenal of psychological tactics look like? First and foremost, let's delve into the quintessential manipulation tool used by every malicious narcissist: gaslighting. The term originates from a play titled Gaslight, in which a husband systematically attempts to convince his wife that she is losing her sanity. Initially, he hides various paintings and jewelry, accusing her of having misplaced them due to a failing memory. Later, his methods become even more insidious. He manipulates the gas lights in their home, causing the lamps to dim intermittently. When his wife asks why the lights are flickering, he feigns ignorance, suggesting that she is imagining it all. Essentially, he's making her doubt her own perception, convincing her that she's descending into madness. Gaslighting is particularly dangerous in toxic relationships. You might hear phrases like, "No one will ever love you the way I do." "You have too many quirks and oddities for anyone else to tolerate." "That never happened, and you know it." "You have a tendency to exaggerate." "You're being overly sensitive." "Can't you take a joke?" "You've been very reactive lately. Maybe you should seek psychological help." "You're always angry. I feel sorry that you've chosen to feel that way." "You're always depressed. You have no right to feel that way. In fact, you don't even feel that way. Let me tell you how you really feel." Manipulating someone's perception in such a deceitful manner is a devastating form of emotional abuse. It causes the victim to question their own feelings, instincts, beliefs, and even their sanity. When the other person is perpetually confused, doubting even their grasp on reality, the narcissist gains significant leverage, making the victim far more dependent and insecure. This in turn provides the narcissist with a rich supply of emotional sustenance. Nothing pleases them more than exerting control and authority over another person's thoughts. Additionally, narcissists will not hesitate to resort to relentless insults and humiliations, attacking various aspects of your life, such as your appearance, intelligence, actions, or emotions. Their language is often aggressive, dripping with resentment, hostility, and sarcasm. The aim is to pull you out of a state of tranquility and thrust you into anger, self-doubt, or sadness. In essence, to demonstrate their power to manipulate your emotional state. Narcissists thrive on conflict, and in many cases, they are the ones who deliberately create and seek it out. As unbelievable as it may seem, it's entirely true. Consider this. Entering into a dispute offers them the perfect opportunity to reinforce their bubble of grandiosity and, most importantly, to position themselves as the victim. The moment you retaliate with aggression, the game is lost. They have already won. Narcissists are adept at defending themselves, and they won't relent until it's clear that they have emerged victorious from the confrontation. This victory is merely another form of emotional sustenance, providing validation and reinforcing their sense of superiority. Every time they manage to frustrate you, every time they succeed in souring your mood, every time they leave you in a state of confusion, they are feeding off the emotional energy they crave. Yet there are times when the narcissist's passive-aggressive remarks, though seemingly benign on the surface, conceal a deeper, more insidious intent. In these moments, the objective shifts from provoking anger or sadness to instilling fear, resentment, or guilt. Consider statements like, "You speak English very well, almost as well as your cousin," or "I once had a friend like you, but he eventually lost his mind." These comments, subtle in delivery, carry a sharp undercurrent designed to undermine. "I don't see why you need to flaunt your talents," they might say, or "I'm sure you plan to attend his birthday without telling me." The implications are clear, sowing seeds of doubt and insecurity. "I understand that your friends are more important than I am, After all, we barely see each other anymore, they might add, with a tone crafted to evoke guilt and self-questioning. Recognizing a narcissist goes beyond these veiled insults, however. One of their most telling traits is an innate inability to acknowledge the achievements of others or to admit their own errors. Narcissists never genuinely congratulate others or apologize unless they fear losing their grip on someone and need to reel them back in. The reason for this is straightforward. Their self-esteem is as fragile as a porcelain doll, their ego as vast as a stadium, and their envy more corrosive than the worst of online trolls. In their minds, praising someone else's success is tantamount to admitting inferiority, and apologizing for their mistakes is an unbearable concession of weakness. Do you now see why the narcissist, despite their facade of confidence, is fundamentally a weak and insecure individual? Returning to the example of the authoritarian boss, although they might have 30 employees who could potentially fall prey to their manipulations and provide the emotional validation they crave, they know that spreading their efforts too thin could be counterproductive. Thus, they often narrow their focus to a smaller, more manageable group, perhaps 10 individuals who will serve as their primary sources of narcissistic supply. The final tactic they deploy is perhaps the most cruel: isolation. The goal is to make the victim feel utterly alone in their struggles, convinced that no one else shares their pain or understands their predicament. The narcissist aims to make themselves appear as the sole lifeline, ensuring that the victim feels the only way to avoid dire consequences is to cater to their every whim. This creates a state of learned helplessness, where the victim feels powerless to change their situation. It's important to recognize that this scenario is a simplified model. In reality, narcissists employ over 100 psychological techniques to manipulate, discredit, and confuse their victims. To delve into all these tactics would require more than just a brief discussion. It would necessitate a comprehensive exploration, perhaps through a series of in-depth analyses. Whether or not this deeper dive happens depends on the interest shown. Should there be demand in the comments and support through engagement, more content could follow. The strategies I've outlined also apply in various other contexts, such as a controlling spouse who selects a partner that can endure their domineering behavior, a teacher who singles out a student to bear the brunt of their frustrations, or a parent who uses their child as a tool to assert power. Given all this, what can be done? In essence, the grandiose delusions of a narcissist who seeks to construct a fantasy world where everyone is compelled to worship their social image are nothing more than reflections of their deep-seated inadequacies. Their insatiable need for praise and admiration, what we've termed emotional supply, reveals their vulnerability. The narcissist believes themselves to be inherently superior to others, and with this belief comes the perceived entitlement to trample over others and inflict emotional abuse through a range of psychological manipulations. Narcissists possess an undeniable allure. Their ability to craft a captivating, larger-than-life persona is nothing short of masterful. They draw others in with grand promises, painting visions of a utopian future that seems just within reach. The more fragile one's self-esteem, the easier it is to fall prey to their charms. But take heed, any one of us could become their ideal target. After all, who wouldn't relish the chance to feel important, to have their presence acknowledged by many? Yet, as the old adage goes, not all that glitters is gold. If you notice that they offer more than they can realistically deliver, be wary. If you observe them treating others with contempt while treating you differently, be suspicious. If their self-aggrandizement seems endless, be on guard. And if they excuse their disrespectful behavior by citing past traumas, question their motives. The solution? It's straightforward, though not necessarily easy. Sever ties with the narcissist. The best course of action is to remove yourself entirely from their influence. The chances of a narcissist genuinely recovering from their condition are minimal, largely due to the nature of the disorder itself. If they can't admit their faults, how can they acknowledge the need for help? On the rare occasions when change does occur, it is often precipitated by a profound emotional upheaval that forces them to confront their behavior. When it comes time to part ways, do so with honesty, empathy, and firmness. Your decision must be unwavering. I recommend that you write down the reasons for your decision and revisit them whenever doubts arise. Focus your energy on the personal endeavors that bring you fulfillment, invest time with those who truly care for you, and continue educating yourself on narcissism and psychological dynamics. This knowledge will empower you to make wiser choices about the company you keep in the future. However, life is rarely so simple. There are times when walking away from a narcissist isn't an immediate option. You might be a child financially dependent on narcissistic parents, a spouse reliant on a domineering partner, or a student under the control of a neurotic teacher. In such cases, the key to regaining some control is to cut off their emotional supply. This involves adopting the gray rock technique, an approach that dates back nearly 2,000 years to a Stoic master. And yes, you'll have to tune in next week to learn exactly how this method works. To close, I leave you with a poignant quote from Shelley Winters that encapsulates the experience of dealing with a narcissist. "We had so much in common. I loved him, and he loved himself.